Imagine going to work every morning knowing the job might kill you. Not in a dramatic accident, but slowly, invisibly, one breath or one touch at a time. For centuries, workers handled poisons they could not see, entered places where the air itself was dangerous, and accepted risks that employers barely understood or simply chose to ignore. Some of these jobs paid only a few coins, some were performed by children, and in several cases the people doing them were told that the obvious warning signs were harmless. Today, we are counting down 7 historical jobs that slowly destroyed the workers. And the closer we get to number 1, the more unbelievable the danger becomes. Number 7. The plague body collectors. When plague entered a European town, ordinary life could collapse within days. Homes were sealed, markets emptied, and carts began moving through the streets to collect the dead. The people loading those carts were sometimes called searchers, bearers, or body collectors. During outbreaks such as the Great Plague of London in 1665, they entered infected homes, examined bodies, and carried them to burial pits. This was before anyone understood bacteria or fleas as the real drivers of bubonic plague. Many people blamed poisoned air, bad smells, or divine punishment. That misunderstanding shaped their protection. Workers might carry herbs, burn tobacco, or cover their faces with cloth. None of it reliably stopped an infected flea. The job also placed them beside contaminated clothing, bedding, rats, and frightened families. Every doorway could be another exposure. Some collectors were people with few other choices. Others were prisoners or the desperately poor. The pay could be higher than ordinary labor because almost nobody wanted the work. But extra coins offered little protection. A collector could finish one night of work, develop fever days later, and become the next body placed on the cart. The famous cry of, "Oh, bring out your dead," has become almost comic in popular culture. For the people behind the carts, it was a daily walk through an epidemic with almost no effective defense. Number 6. The powder monkeys. On wooden warships during the Age of Sail, cannons needed a constant supply of gunpowder. That powder was stored deep below deck, away from sparks and enemy fire. During battle, small and fast runners carried charges from the magazine to the gun crews. Many were boys. Sailors called them powder monkeys. Their size made them useful in cramped passages, but it also placed children inside one of the most violent machines ever built from wood. They ran while the ship rolled. Cannons recoiled, splinters crossed the deck, and smoke made it difficult to breathe or see. A single enemy cannonball could turn oak walls into clouds of sharp fragments. Then there was the powder itself. One careless flame inside the magazine could destroy the entire vessel. Strict rules tried to prevent sparks, yet war does not reward perfect control. Even when a ship survived, repeated exposure to deafening cannon fire damaged hearing. Thick smoke from black powder irritated the lungs. Injuries could become infected in an era before modern antibiotics. Powder monkeys are often drawn as adventurous little sailors. The reality was a child repeatedly sprinting between explosives and artillery while adults tried to tear the ship apart. If you enjoy entertaining documentaries about the strangest parts of history, subscribe to Crude Context. It helps more than you think. And now back to the workers who somehow had it even worse. Number 5. The Victorian chimney sweeps. In 18th and 19th century Britain, narrow household chimneys needed cleaning. Adults could not fit into many of the passages, so master sweeps sent children upward instead. Some climbing boys were only 5 or 6 years old. They squeezed into black shafts, using their knees, elbows, and backs to push themselves through soot. The work caused cuts, burns, twisted joints, damaged eyesight, and lungs filled with dust. Children could become trapped inside bends or suffocate where the chimney narrowed. Masters sometimes used horrifying methods to make them climb faster. A small fire might be lit below them, or another child might be sent in behind them. The danger did not end when they escaped the chimney. Soot remained on their skin and clothing for long periods because many had little access to washing. In 1775, Surgeon Percival Pott described an unusual cancer affecting chimney sweeps. It became one of the first occupational cancers ever clearly connected to a workplace exposure. The disease appeared around the scrotum, where soot accumulated in folds of skin. Many victims were still young when the damage became visible. People now understood that the job was mutilating children, yet reform moved slowly. Laws were passed, poorly enforced, and passed again while climbing boys continued disappearing into chimneys. Mechanical brushes eventually made the practice unnecessary. But for generations, warm fireplaces in comfortable homes depended on children entering spaces that could crush, poison, burn, or bury them alive. Number 4. The Matchgirls. In the 19th century, factories produced millions of matches by dipping wooden sticks into chemical mixtures. One ingredient made ignition easy: white phosphorus. Workers, many of them young women and girls, handled it day after day in poorly ventilated rooms. The fumes entered their bodies while dust settled on their clothes and food. At first, a worker might notice toothache. Then the gums could swell, abscesses formed, and part of the jawbone began to die. The condition became known as phossy jaw. It caused terrible pain, disfigurement, foul discharge, and sometimes a strange glow from exposed phosphorus reacting with air. Removing teeth did not solve the poisoning. In severe cases, surgeons had to cut away sections of the jaw. Infection could spread and kill the worker. Factory owners knew the process was dangerous, but white phosphorus was cheap and effective. Workers who complained risked losing wages or being dismissed. In 1888, workers at the Bryant and May factory in London went on strike. Their dispute included low pay, fines, and dangerous conditions. Public attention made it harder to pretend that the suffering was simply bad luck. Safer alternatives existed, but industry resisted change until regulation and public pressure made white phosphorus matches increasingly unacceptable. A tiny object designed to create a convenient flame was built by workers whose own bones were being chemically destroyed. Number 3. The Mad Hatters. The phrase "amod" as a hatter sounds like nonsense from a storybook. It came from a very real industrial poison. Hat makers used mercury compounds while turning animal fur into felt. The process helped separate and prepare the fibers, but heating and handling the material released mercury into workshops. Workers breathed the vapor for years. Mercury attacks the nervous system, and chronic exposure can change movement, speech, memory, and personality. A poisoned hatter might develop shaking hands, known as the hatter's shakes. They could become irritable, anxious, withdrawn, forgetful, or unable to coordinate simple tasks. To customers, the finished hat looked clean and fashionable. The invisible damage remained with the person who made it. Entire hat-making towns became associated with the symptoms. In Danbury, Connecticut, the tremor was sometimes called the Danbury Shakes. Because the decline could be gradual, employers and doctors did not always recognize one clear cause. A worker might simply appear unstable or unreliable, then lose the job that had made him sick. Mercury use in hat production survived far longer than the warning signs justified. Economic pressure and weak regulation allowed a known hazard to remain part of ordinary manufacturing. The strange behavior attached to the image of the Go-Mad Hatter was not an amusing personality. It was brain and nerve damage disguised as a cultural joke. Number 2. The Caisson Workers. Building foundations beneath a river creates a simple problem. Water keeps entering the hole. 19th century engineers answered with enormous pressurized chambers called caissons. Workers entered through airlocks. Compressed air pushed water away, allowing men to dig into the riverbed beneath bridges and docks. Inside, the pressure made the work possible. Leaving too quickly made it deadly. When a person breathes compressed air, extra nitrogen dissolves into the body. If pressure drops too rapidly, bubbles can form in blood and tissues. Workers emerged with joint pain so severe that they bent forward while walking. Others suffered dizziness, paralysis, seizures, breathing problems, or death. The illness became known as Caisson disease, and later as decompression sickness or the bends. During construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, laborers worked in pressurized caissons below the East River. Fires, heat, darkness, and physical exhaustion already made the chambers dangerous. Then men began collapsing after returning to the surface. Chief Engineer Washington Roebling developed serious symptoms after spending time in the caisson and lived with lasting disability. At first, nobody fully understood the mechanism. Slower decompression reduced the danger. But work schedules, deadlines, and incomplete medical knowledge kept exposing crews. These laborers created the foundations of structures celebrated as engineering triumphs. Tourists looked upward at stone towers and cables. The hidden cost remained beneath the water, in damaged joints, lungs, and nervous systems. Number 1. The Radium Dial Painters. In the early 20th century, radium seemed miraculous. It glowed, it was modern, and companies mixed it into paint for watch and instrument dials. Factories hired young women to paint tiny numbers with extremely fine brushes. To keep the tip sharp, supervisors taught them a technique called lip, dip, paint. They placed the brush between their lips, dipped it into radium paint, and repeated the process again and again throughout the shift. Some workers painted their nails, teeth, or faces for fun because the dust glowed in darkness. They had been told the material was safe. Inside the body, radium behaves in ways similar to calcium. It can settle in bones, where radiation continues damaging nearby tissue. The first signs included tooth loss, anemia, pain, and wounds that refused to heal. Then jaws began breaking down, bones weakened, cancers appeared. One worker's jaw reportedly came apart when a dentist tried to remove a tooth. Others endured amputations, tumors, or years of agony without understanding why their bodies were failing. The most disturbing part is that scientists and managers already treated radium carefully in laboratories. Some used shields and protective equipment. The dial painters received no equivalent warning. When sick workers sought compensation, companies challenged their claims, blamed other diseases, and relied on legal delays. Several women died before their cases were resolved. The women who became known as the Radium Girls fought back. Their lawsuits helped establish that employers could be held responsible for occupational disease, and their suffering influenced workplace safety standards. Their bones remained radioactive long after death. The glowing paint that made watches easier to read had placed a permanent source of radiation inside the people holding the brushes. 7 jobs, 7 examples of workers paying for convenience, construction, warfare, fashion, and public health with their own bodies. The danger was not always secret. Children coughed soot, hatters shook, matchworkers lost their jaws, radium painters became sick one after another. What changed history was not merely discovering that the work was dangerous. It was forcing powerful institutions to admit that workers were not disposable. Modern safety rules can look excessive until we remember what existed before them. Ventilation, protective clothing, exposure limits, compensation, and the right to refuse dangerous work were written in response to real people who never received those protections. Which of these jobs disturbed you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more entertaining explanations about strange history, bizarre science, and unbelievable true stories, subscribe to Crude Context. Thanks for watching.